All right. Welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. And today we have a continuation of what we're doing, but I'm joined again by Warren and Easton both. We're all out of a tree for this short, brief moment because some of us still do have some tags, some don't. So, but anyhow, we are going to talk a little bit today about some strategies that are coming up, trying to get ahead of, we got a shotgun season that's about to take place. A lot of gun seasons have already started in other states, but some things that you can do there. But we're also going to talk about a study that we've read about that talking about culling deer and does it work and what's your thought process on it. And then I won't go too much into it. We'll just say that we're going there. What?
Did that one come from some shooter's remorse?
Not at all.
Okay.
It actually proves what I'm saying.
Shooter's remorse. What do you mean?
Well, Dad's been taking out some management deer.
Well, I have an opinion on that too.
Well, I'm guessing his article is going to back it up if he doesn't have shooter's remorse.
No, it does and it doesn't. We'll get there. So we'll talk about it here in just
So
a
if you
minute.
only look at the parts that feed to your side, then you can feel good about it,
No,
right?
I'll read all parts.
I'm just saying.
I'll
Okay.
give both parts. All right.
But we got reviews real quick.
Shout-outs, yep.
Yes. As Hillbilly High Test pointed out, we don't have any sponsors on the podcast. And part of the reason we're able to do that is because you guys have been so awesome about supporting us. So we're going to ask that if you're willing to do anything to help us out, if you're listening and you enjoy any of it, send it to a friend, share it with somebody, or leave us a review, a good review. If you don't want to leave a good review, then there's thousands of podcasts. Go find another one. So
Leave a bad one on
if you
theirs.
want to leave a good review, you're our buddy. So this week we got a shout out BWillie0826. He's from South Dakota and he's loving the podcast. Appreciate you, buddy. Hope you're whacking and stacking them out there in SD. And then Jay Wenrick, great energy, knowledge, and a wacky fact at the end. Look at that, bringing value. You're welcome, Jay Wenrick.
Hey,
shout out to
I
you, my
actually
man.
enjoy your wacky facts when they're wacky, not
Spotify.
Warren's weird facts or Warren's
Spotify, we need
interesting.
12. We need Spotify to keep clutching up. 12 more, and they'll have us over 200.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Would you just look at that? Thank you very much.
Yeah, Spotify knows what's
So
up.
keep it
Today
up.
we have
Keep it
to
up.
shout out, though, for our first part of our first topic because we do try to do seasonality. And I would imagine he is from Iowa, unless there's somewhere else that has a shotgun 1 and 2 season.
I think there's
There's
several
probably
places.
a couple, but anyways, Jordy P. wrote into our website and sent us in some questions about going into that season. So that's a good transition for us because
Thank you, Jordy.
today is November 21st,
Yep.
and we are getting close. And I still have not filled a deer tag. I'm pushing that Thanksgiving mark again, and I don't know how or why, but you know what? It seems to be a common occurrence, so here we are.
You do tag out late.
I don't understand it, but it's whatever.
How many of your deer have been before November 15th?
When I lived
One.
with Dad was quite a bit.
Okay,
feel
since
like-
then. So, since, 18.
All I can think of is one.
One,
My
which
big
is the
deer.
big deer.
The rest of them have been November 27th, December 2nd, December 1st. That's 3, 4. Yeah, that's the past 5.
I got to
So-
give it to you, though. I don't think I know anybody else that's killed as many deer in the first 2 or 3 days of December as you.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Well, it just means that we're covering all through the month, that we have someone that's an expert on all walks of life.
I've definitely hunted a lot of late season.
Yeah,
late season.
You see every stage of the rut, no matter what.
Yeah, no crap.
All right, so let's hear the question that we want to try to answer, though.
So he's talking about some shotgun 1 and 2 tactics. So for reference, in Iowa, that's going to be, I think this year, like December 3rd through the 17th. So we're coming up on it. He wants to talk about hunting extreme cold days or days when it's very cold when you don't have a stationary blind. I would imagine that's kind of just what you're setting up on as far as for the deer, as well as what are you doing to stay warm if you don't have yourself a buddy heater that Warren loves to have with him.
Go get one. That's what you do.
Yeah, what are you going to do, set that in the field with you?
Dude, I've considered bringing it to the stand.
Oh,
There's
my
enough room
Lord.
on my platform. Put it right there. Toasty.
Whatever.
And then the other part of that was, is there any type of calling tactics? Like, is rattling still working? Is grunting still working? Is this whatever? I think to start off, as far as a cold without stationary blind, I like that he's asking us because you can tell that this guy is going to be sitting, like trying to sit somewhere with, even during gun season, as opposed to the controversial pushing. And I know that might make some people mad, but as far as tactics go, I think it's going to be relatively similar. I mean, he's not going to be able to shoot super far. I mean, I don't know.
But further than with a bow.
Yeah,
So.
obviously. But I think that you're going to be focusing on food. You're going to be focusing on travel patterns. And a lot of that could come – you could start paying attention to that now if you wanted to do some scouting, even if you're just driving out to where you may be hunting if you have the ability to, and just see what some of the deer are doing. Are they focusing on corn? Are they focusing on beans? I would probably say if you don't have anything set up as far as like your turnips or brassicas or things that get better in cold season, and some people may disagree, and some people are probably going to be right on with it. I would say that I would start with corn. Cut corn seems to be when it gets colder, they seem to hit that. Unless you have something like standing beans or something. I've always seen them going into cut corn, which is odd because it's not the best for their digestive system when it gets into the very cold. But so that would be my recommendation. But if you have beans, corn, any kind of ag, anything that they are going to or from that's a food source, that's what I'd be looking for and scouting for and sitting on.
And I guess what I would add to that is the scouting part is probably crucial just to tell you whether or not there is corn in the area. There are beans in the area. Is there any left standing? Is it all gone? The other biggest thing, though, when we're talking shotgun season is what is the pressure around you going to do? So one of the things is you may sit in an off-the-wall place, a small wooded lot that goes between it, two things where deer can get away from the pushes that are going on, the other people entering the woods and things like that.
They'll find it pretty quick.
And they'll find it really
and
quick.
A lot of them probably even know beforehand. Like if they're an older deer or they've been through a season or two, they may already start moving towards places a certain time of year because they know it's safe.
Well, we deal with it, I mean, on multiples of our farms that we hunt, that there's a lot of pressure around us. And yet we had deer that would make it. The big 8 was one that we would see. He would disappear. He wasn't on us. The only time that he stayed there the one year was when I had really good brassicas in there. Had a really good food plot that came in. But other than that, that was the only year that he was able to stay on that. But he found somewhere that he could go and live, and that's how he got to be 6 years old. And so you're trying to find that location where they're not expecting that. So sneaking into an area like that. So don't overlook the small woodlot, and when I say small, it could be an acre, could be just a strip of trees. CRP seems to be another great place for them to get away. So looking for things like that can really, really help. The other thing, though, that not knowing, you made mention of distance, not being able to shoot that far. Now in Iowa, if Jordy's hunting Iowa, we don't know whether there's certain rifle cartridges that you can reach out there a little bit farther. I mean, when I say a little bit farther, straight wall cartridges that will actually reach a couple hundred yards pretty easily. Yeah. So that can change the way that you set up as well. I'm not like Warren as far as a buddy heater. I'm the guy that doesn't carry a heater. But what I would tell you that is super effective is bibs and a jacket that goes with. When you wear bibs, it just makes your entire body that much warmer.
I'm a huge fan of bibs and vests. Vests were a game changer for me, and I know a lot of people aren't big fans of them, but if you can find a vest that keeps you warm, oh my goodness, your core, you'll be surprised how much warmer you stay.
Yep.
I was going to say the other thing that sounds really stupid that I've done it in a tree stand before, because I've hunted some days obviously late that are with my bow and it's freaking cold, and I don't have Alyssa uses that like freaking sleeping bag thing that goes on her
heater bodysuit.
Yep. That which is funny, but she says it's warm, isn't it? And she gets cold pretty easy.
Yeah.
That would be one. Another one that I've done, because I don't have one of them, is I've taken a freaking comforter to my stand before. It sounds stupid, but I'm like, as long as I can stand up and do my thing and it's not going to affect much, it is wonderful. It's like a little tucking into bed in a tree stand or
the
something.
heater bodysuit is basically that. It's like a sleeping bag blanket that's big enough to wrap around you, and yet has a waist belt, so that when you slide out of it, it doesn't fall to the ground. It doesn't slip and fall out of the tree. It's designed, but that's basically what it is. The only other thing is the outside of it is some type of waterproof covering.
Yep.
But they make them I've seen them in fleece, and I've seen them not fleece, so that they're really quiet. But no, I've used one of those before, and they're like crazy.
They're good.
I mean, you don't even think about getting cold.
Number one thing I'd say is a hand muff.
Yep,
with hand warmers in it.
I do a hand muff without hand warmers.
Yeah,
solely for the fact that I hate pulling my hands out because it's that much colder. But it is nice to be able to put your hands back in there and you feel very warm. But
I would have a couple things to add to this. One, I would assume that he's the only one hunting this property. Because, in my opinion, if you're not the only one hunting this property and it gets pushed and you're not in some kind of communications with them, I personally wouldn't even do it. And I think just you have to talk about the safety factor of it, that here in Iowa, there is somebody usually, I don't know that it's even every other year. I think there's somebody that is killed or shot every single year. We actually knew a guy that was killed on public here. A lot of times when they're doing these drives, they're kind of shooting at each other because I don't know how else to put it. So me personally, there's no deer worth it that if I was going to go sit on a property and didn't know what other people were doing and were going to push, that I would choose a deer over being in crossfire. I'm not interested in doing that. So first thing I would do is I'd say make sure that you are either in communications with who's supposed to be on that property and if there's going to be people on there, or don't even go, because you don't want to be sitting there and having people doing a push on both sides of you and you're getting shot at because they don't know you're there. But then the next thing that I would say is, me personally, I think I have two other things that I'd add to that. I think shotgun season can be better than the rut as far as getting new deer.
Yeah.
Because is what we've seen, and I'll preface this with I've never hunted shotgun season, so this has been pretty much strictly witnessing. Now, we've drove around a lot, did a lot of scouting, and unfortunately having to basically police our property lines during shotgun season. But basically is what I'm saying is we got a chance to watch the deer. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about how to kill a deer during shotgun season. However, I can tell you what I would do. Some of our properties, we've literally watched deer. I've watched 30, 40 deer run right through a piece that you would think if they just got pushed out of somewhere, I'm going to stop right here. I should be safe. I can get in this timber. And they'll go right through it. And they'll go right onto a property where they know nobody else can. I've never been pushed in here before. I'm going there. And they know exactly where that is. So if I know some of those entrances into my property or a place I'm hunting that nobody else can be pushing, I'm going to be off that fence line a pretty good ways, or have Kevlar with me so that I don't catch a stray, but I'm going to sit at that freaking funnel. And I think the chances of you catching a big buck trying to get in there is really good. However, I think that something that's really interesting to note is your really big deer. It seems like they know before shotgun even starts. Yeah, they move. That deer we had that we called Hammer, you guys heard us refer to him a lot, was unbelievably smart. Would not show up on us until, I found a shed and thought we'd figured out, I was just missing him. He's on this little piece on the fence. No, that deer didn't show up until I felt like an idiot because I hung a stand I called Hammer Stand, and then had a camera there and stuff and never had a picture of Hammer. And then November 29th, I had a picture of Hammer. I was like, holy shit, now he's here. Well, then the 29th, 30th, 31st, and the 1st, 4 days in a row, I had pictures of the deer. He was there within 10 minutes of himself an hour after dark. Is what we'd realize is that deer knew that where his core area was, shotgun season was coming, and he moved to somewhere that was safe. So one, I'm saying I think that you have a chance at a whole bunch of new deer and probably really good deer. And then the next thing that I'd be doing is I'd be really, really careful on the pressure I applied. I'd be trying to make sure that I'm not going to go sit on a field edge where when I leave, I'm going to bust 20 deer, because I don't think you can get away with near as much as you can late season or during archery season. After they get pushed a whole bunch and they get a lot of pressure, they're nowhere near as tolerant. So if they think, oh man, I'm not safe here, they're gonna move. They're out. like I'd be really careful. I'd be trying to give myself a little bit of a buffer, and then if I still wasn't able to close the deal and had a deer that was doing something, consistently, then I'd be trying to get a little bit more aggressive once I was running out of days, basically.
Yep.
But that's the interesting thing too, is I'd say we've found, like, once they make it to 3, we used to think, deer are always just going to get, your big deer are always going to get smoked during shotgun season. And it seems like unless it's a new property that they haven't been pushed on before, your deer that have made it through 3 years old with shotgun season have learned, okay, I know I can go over to this place or go to that place and be safe.
The biggest concern is, or the biggest obstacle they face is the first day. They get caught somewhere that they're not supposed to be because they're doing whatever. They don't realize that it's gotten here, and then wham, they get caught. Or because then they get, they're moved from one area to another. If they get a chance to get on their pattern that has gotten them through the last couple of years, they're pretty dang good at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll go and they'll hold tight.
Yep.
It will not leave.
So.
I was going to say about calling. Go ahead.
Well, hang on. One more thing, because don't overlook alfalfa. We talked about beans and corn, but and it just depends on the year for shotgun season here, whether it's cold enough to drive them to food.
Yeah.
We're not really to that late season feeding pattern that we're talking about. But alfalfa can be another big pull, really big pull.
Yep. I don't know. So again, I haven't. Warren hasn't. Dad had. Yeah, I don't. Well, Dad's hunted a little bit, like with Mitch and stuff during shotgun season. I have called in my second biggest deer. I called in on December 2nd with antlers from like 300 yards away. So I don't think that that's a consistent thing. I think I got kind of lucky because it was like the last 5 minutes of light, and I was like, that looks like a shooter. I'm gonna rattle and hope that something happens. And the freaking deer turned around, and it was, all of 300 yards, and rubbed every tree on the way in, and came freaking trotting right to 7 yards, and I shot him. So I think that if you found the right deer, I don't know how you're gonna tell, because he was just out in the field with probably 10 other does and a couple little bucks and stuff that were just feeding around. But when I touched the antlers, turned around on a line. I don't think that that's gonna be like a super consistent thing. But hey, you might be surprised. My point with that is that I wouldn't be like scared to try something.
If you're in an unpressured area, the area that you're in is not pressured, you're not dealing with a whole bunch of other farms neighboring you are they're sitting as well. They're not pushing.
Yeah.
You might be able to rattle a deer in. Because you're going to get two things that are going to happen later in the year. You're going to get one, does that did not get bred. Some of them will get missed, and they'll come back into season 28 days later. Then the other one that starts, and this is more late season, is when you start to get fawns that actually mature fast enough that they become fertile and can actually breed this first year. And those bucks will find those fawns, So there's a couple other options that are out there, but as far as calling goes, I would not put
wouldn't rely on it.
I wouldn't. Yeah. It's not a big money maker at that time, but at the same time, I ain't going anywhere without my antlers and a grunt call.
Yeah.
At
this year I've very, very strongly considered just saying screw it and setting them in the truck, so I don't screw them. But
I think I'm going to grab next time I'm out at your house.
A can call.
I'll be really interested. Have you ever heard a doe do that?
Yeah.
Really?
Me and Nick have heard a couple this year.
And what did the bucks do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
That I saw. When you hear it, a lot of times we don't know what they're doing. You hear it, and then the deer shows up.
I think I've heard one this year do it, which is one of the first. I do not hear it very often.
I just wonder, like that deer that Alyssa and I had close the other day, if obviously he's looking for a doe. If I had can called, would he come another
10 yards,
20 yards?
I don't know.
Because he's like, well, that's what I'm looking for.
I don't know, because there's guys that swear by him.
Oh yeah,
that have great luck with them.
I
would say that the times that I have tried it has not been the right time of the year.
Right.
Like I've tried it too early or something. I think your best opportunity for that would, again, I could be wrong, but I would think the best opportunity would be the time of year when you're finding bucks cruising, looking for a doe here and there kind of thing.
Well, here's the thing, that the same thing applies during shotgun season that applies to you the last week of deer season with your bow. When you're talking about, you got a deer at 300 yards and he's calm, you see him, if you have no call whatsoever, you have no chance of getting that deer to come over to you. At least if you can break out your antlers and try.
Yeah.
I mean, because what are you missing? And with the shotgun or one of these straight wall cartridges, maybe you only need him to come 100 yards.
Yeah.
And puts himself or step out of the timber and into a field to see what he heard, and next thing you know, you got a shot.
Yeah.
So it can't hurt to have them. I would not go around doing a whole bunch of blind rattling during shotgun season. That's probably not. And the other one that I would caution on, because I've seen someone do it here in Iowa, is in employing a decoy during shotgun season.
Yeah.
That is just dangerous. I don't care whether you're in a tree stand and away from it. I saw that and I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me.
Off the road.
Right off the road.
Yeah.
I could see it from the road. And I was like, man, that is just a good way to get someone hurt. The only one worse that I've ever seen was the guys
Maybe it was the DNR.
It wasn't the DNR.
Trying to set somebody up.
But the only one worse I've ever seen is an antelope. Two guys behind an antelope decoy.
During rifle season?
During the first day of rifle season in Montana.
How are you that stupid?
I don't know.
I'm not even you can't be like, oh, no, like, what are you thinking?
And it was a buck. I mean, it was a little, one of the buck decoys, and they're behind it trying to sneak up on a herd of antelope.
If somebody accidentally shot them, I almost wouldn't even be mad at them.
The only thing I could understand is maybe, like, if they knew there was a big chunk that they're the only people on, that they 100% can control it.
On public?
That wasn't on public. That was on private. But it was still, I could see them from the interstate when I was driving past them and saw what they were doing. And I would not take the chance of someone pulling over on the side of the road.
If I was by a road or something like that, I would not
I'm
like
like,
that.
you guys are nuts. All right. So hopefully that helps, a little bit of the shotgun. But
one other warmth tip, a net gator.
Oh, yeah, that is huge.
Incredible. Makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a fluffy one.
Yeah, get a big fluffy one. Huntworth has one for like $25. I think it makes the biggest difference. You wouldn't think that it would make that big a difference. Huge.
Just covering up your neck. Like what is that material? The stretchy one that's not fluffy that we use like year round. Just the neck.
I don't know.
Face mask. It's like ours, kind of. Whatever that is, it's like not insulated or anything. There's times that I even just put that on my neck because it's not anything special, but even if it's somewhat cold and it's windy, just keeping the air off of my neck is phenomenal.
The only thing
fluffy
I know
ones are great.
Tell Huntworth they need to do next year is they need to take like a plastic spoon or something on the bottom of it,
goodness,
and make a snot trough.
Gross,
because otherwise it catches it.
So
when it's real cold. You know it's true though.
It is so gross.
And then every once in a while you get unlucky and you taste it a little bit.
Whoa,
you're like,
Warren.
You know it's true.
I don't taste it.
I'm just gonna make a little snot trough so it just drips off.
Ew.
Clam chowder.
God, that's so gross.
Oh, that's nasty. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about this article that I read. So this article came from the National Deer Association, and what they were talking about was, and I'm not going to read the entire article, it's pretty lengthy, but what they're talking about is strike three for the myth of the genetic cull buck. And what they were referring to was, and I will read you just a picture, and I'll hold this up for Nick so that he can focus on that. Can you see that? Because what they're saying is that how much, what's the percentage that if a buck has long tines, he's going to pass on long tines? If he has long main beam, is he going to pass on a long main beam? Does he have mass? Is he going to pass on the mass? Is he going to pass on width? Width is actually zero. They say that there's nothing passed on there. Tine count, meaning the number of tines, is a 19% chance that they'll pass that on. Tine length is 49%, which happens to be the highest. Beam length, 13%, gross score, 35%, and mass, 28%. What this article actually leads to, and I'm just going to summarize kind of what they did. They took deer in Texas, because that's the one place where they could do this. They made a pin, a 5-acre pin. They went and captured wild deer. They helicoptered them and pulled them, put them in this enclosure. So they were wild deer. They were not pen-raised deer. And they put one buck in there with 15 does. Okay, and he happened to be a 200 and some inch non-typical in one section, and in another section, not together, they put another typical 170 some inch deer in this section with 15 does. And then what they were doing was tagging those deer after he bred them and they had the fawns. Then they would release them into the wild, but they were tagged so they knew who they were. And this is a 15-year study. I mean, these guys
That's amazing.
They went super extensive. How much do you think they contributed to antler growth by targeting who those deer were? Because I was shocked when I saw it.
So they killed some of these deer, or they didn't kill them?
They did not kill them at first. Now, what they started doing was culling deer, and there's a number in here. It was thousands.
So are they trying to basically have 15 does that carried on good genetics and put those back into the wild, hoping that...
Well, they're saying they gave the buck the opportunity to be the only buck that bred with those does.
Yeah.
Okay, so they
So
knew
it's
that.
So they knew a
genetics.
200-inch deer had bred 15 does.
And same with the 170-some-inch deer.
Yep.
And then they put them back out in the wild so that they had the same. Everything else was the same.
Controlled
food,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the only thing after 15 years of this, they came up with the fact that 7-inch difference. A 7-inch difference from a buck that was born that did not have that dad or sired by that father to just any buck out there running around. There was a 7-inch difference. Inside the control was an average 152-inch deer. Outside of the control was a 145-inch deer. Now, the interesting part was the ranch is way bigger than just this area where they did these. They only used a few thousand acres, and it's a 9,000-acre ranch. Big portion of the ranch, the average deer is only 120 inches. So just the fact that from a portion of the ranch to the part where, why are these deer so much bigger on this part of the ranch? Well, that's when they discovered it was the food. They had been working extremely hard on managing the area because they were already working on these deer there. So they were working on, and the only major difference that they could come up with was that that it wasn't the genetics that was causing it, because these deer were 25 inches bigger.
So did they say
Those are 25 inches before they ever introduced the big deer.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
where did the 200-inch deer and the 170-inch deer come from?
Off the ranch. They
Okay, so these deer were there.
they were wild.
On their, okay. So if you said 152 inches is the average, obviously
inside the
there
pen.
was some bigger deer though then and some smaller ones.
Correct.
So like if of the 170-inch deer, did they say if any of them also was turned into 170-inch typical?
No, they didn't say. What they did say, part of it, what it does say is that they had oftentimes a weak antlered buck would produce the best offspring, meaning he's not your big buck, but yet his offspring were always very well mature. And they got pictures in here of some of the deer, the way they have pictures of the helicopter and stuff like that. But I was going to find a picture of how they would tell you like all the things that they captured. Let me see if I can find the picture.
So what was categorized as a weak antlered buck?
Okay, so let me give you a for instance, like this one. He's 6.5 years old. His number is 9453. He weighed 163 pounds. He scored 123 and 6/8. Okay, and then they have the tag number that they put on him. You can kind of see that's what he is. He's just shy of Pope and Young.
Okay.
However, he sired many bucks. Let me find where that were abnormally larger, but yet he was weaker.
And so did that genetic then come from his father?
Well, 50% of it comes from the doe. So that's where you don't know.
So could it have been then that the gene skipped him, but he had it in him, and then paired with a good doe, creating a...
Well, I've also read that does almost have a better, a bigger portion of creating or having a larger offspring than the buck does.
However, though,
Well, they're saying it's 50%, that it's 50-50.
It's even
Yep.
50-50.
So here's what they wrote about that deer. This buck had the highest breeding value out of 2,503 bucks in the Comanche Ranch study, meaning he produced large antlered offspring, but his own antlers were only average. He grossed 123 inches at 6.5 years old.
Did they say what year was the biggest of the deer? Like with 4, 5, 6, 7?
No, they just said that mature deer fully mature deer from 5.5 to 7.5. That's when their peak. That's their prime.
Okay. So essentially is what you're saying, or what this is saying, is that you actually have a better chance of growing big deer by controlling what you're feeding them
Absolutely.
than by trying to manage, which I think is going to be much easier than trying to control the deer that are breeding and all that.
The gentleman that wrote it actually says that. He says most of us don't have the opportunity, number one, the amount of land it would take to manage a herd to this degree. Number two, we don't have a helicopter, don't have the laws that provide us the ability to go capture them and do all this and tranquilize them. And so, but what they are saying is that if the food, and I guess that because we have seen this year, and I don't think it's just us, I think it's across the board. And don't get me wrong, you killed a absolutely slammer of a deer. But not par for the course is normally we have maybe not that big, but we normally have more bigger deer.
Yeah.
And I really think that the effect is now we're seeing the stress from this drought. I think that we are seeing that this drought is bigger than what we think it is, and therefore it's starting to affect antler growth. And
how long technically have we been in a drought?
3 years, I can tell you, from food plot.
Well, I mean, like legitimately, not just your opinion.
Oh, well, no, that's like been over a decade.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. What there's
or something like we need to fact check me.
Yeah.
Where's our Jamie? But I know that it's longer than 3 years that they considered it a drought.
Well, I can just tell you that in 3 years I've been keeping track of the counties that where you're hunting.
Yeah.
And I'm always watching them. I go to there's a drought calculator, and it tells you where you sit, and we're always in the high to moderate drought years, but that's just seasonal. That's not considered like a 10-year span. They're just saying, okay, where up north is getting 2.5 inches of rain and we don't get it.
Yeah.
But so I can't remember all of the features of the antlers that you said were carried on in the percentages. I know you said like 35% gross score or something like that.
49%,
0% width,
tine length.
So inside spread does not affect like I'll use the wide 10, the buck that I refer to as the wide 10. He's 21, 22 inches wide.
Yep.
Chances of him passing that on to another deer?
Zero. Okay. So like obviously this would be a perfect world if you did have, let's just take a high fence, for instance, because that's the only way you could ever control enough of these factors to possibly do this. Could you kill all the short tine deer? Which, see, that's what's kind of confusing to me, is because that deer that they showed, the 123, he's short tined. But could you kill all the short tine deer, and could you call out all of those that have the least probability of being passed on and only keep the deer that have the best probability of the best features to be passed on, and it make a 30, 40, 50, 60% difference in the quality of your deer?
No.
Why?
Because what I'm saying is
if the food is there, though, too. They have the food for them as well.
Well, what they're saying is that, and let me find it. It might take me a minute.
So it doesn't make sense to me though about the width one too. Is that they're saying it's 0%? That's still got to be a genetic makeup that there's width in his antlers. So even if it's a small amount, you'd think that there's got to be at least a percentage, whether it's a dominant or a recessive gene, that it's got to be passed on or have a chance to be passed on.
Well, could that be categorized different? Because technically your width, I think, somewhat is going to come from how it sits on their head.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay,
that's true.
Here's the deer that they killed. They culled in one. This was on a different study. There's 3 studies that this guy has written about, and this one was the King Ranch study. And so they took out Mickey Hellickson, then still earning his PhD, set an extremely liberal target for culls that included any 1.5-year-old buck with less than 6 antlered points, and any buck 2.5 years old or 2.5 years or older with less than 9 antlered points. He applied that to 9,496 acre treatment area on the King Ranch. Meanwhile, ranchers culled no bucks on a nearby control area. So in one area, they're targeting and taking out the ones you're talking about. Even doing
the ones that aren't ideal for antler growth.
Absolutely. And yet at the end of the day, what they ended up with, the 2 areas, there was a 7-inch difference in mature deer.
But it did make a difference.
It did make a difference, but it took 15 years
Yeah.
in 15 years, and they're killing thousands of deer.
Yeah,
I
basically
mean,
saying that unless you have probably 3,000 to 5,000 acres of contiguous land,
correct.
and that you're really only targeting the deer that's in their core area, nobody on the edges, that even, well, I guess it probably, was that whole thing a high fence ranch, or then it was, they released them into wild, meaning low fence?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, but when you're talking 9,500 acre,
Well, I'm
you're-
just wondering,
you're having
were they
deer that are never
controlling the
leaving.
deer that could come in as well? You know what I'm saying? Meaning that you
Right.
get a different deer that now just introduced a whole bunch of
I think that a
different
lot
genetics.
of that kind of makes sense too, because if you think about it, what I've always struggled with is that no matter how good of a management job some people do, you'll hear some people that have phenomenal results, that they have lots and lots of big deer, and you have other people that are managing extremely well but don't have that great of results. And I think that when you really just look at it, the consistencies of areas that always produce large deer, like all the time. Like we all know that there's certain spots in Iowa that are like at this county or this area over here, like somebody's gonna kill a freaking or multiple tanks every year. It's just there. I think is part of you're not gonna be able to take somewhere that's next to it, and unless you can do something where you are controlling every bit of food, everything that they're consuming, and controlling a lot more factors than you probably possibly can, I don't think certain areas are going to be able to give you what another one does. I think a lot of it has to do with what is already there and in that area, and that could be a huge disagreement. But I mean,
Well, this would be my question. So, would the statement that Iowa has the genetics be completely false? And it's actually the fact that Iowa has corn and beans and a pile of it everywhere for the deer to eat. Did they
Well,
break down? Did they break down and say in simple terms, where non-scientific, so that we can understand it, that culling the deer attributed to 50% of the antler growth of the potential of a deer? So what I'm trying to say is, if a deer was going to be 150 inches, the fact that they did all this management before and calling certain deer ended up contributing 50% of what that deer needed to become the best deer that it could. Or did they say, but food controls 80% of it? Did they say what these other deer were eating in the area that they were so much bigger? Because you said there was a 25-inch difference in the two places, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and hold on, they said something to the degree.
Because what I'm
Because
wondering, are genetics 10% and food is 90%?
okay, hold on, 15 to 223 inch. These two bucks were okay. It was toward the end when they talked about. All right. Well, here's the thing. We've been wrong, or I've been dead wrong, because I believe that the boss buck, need to get him out of there. He's 125-inch deer. We knew he was 125-inch deer every year. We don't want that genetic. You know, I got deer that I'm thinking I don't want that genetic. I got deer that's still alive that breaks his antler every year. He's the second one. Squiggle was the first one, and I don't know what happened to Squiggle, but I didn't end up killing him. The next one is a buck I call the drop tine buck because he has a 2-inch drop tine. He busts it off every year, breaks his rack into pieces. Something's wrong with his rack, or he's just
fighting
A
them.
brawler.
fighting that much that he's going to break, but he breaks early and every year. And so I'm thinking target that deer because I don't want him to pass on that genetic. In this study, they're saying that ain't true. He may be passing on something that is a much bigger deer, even though he doesn't carry it, and you have no way of knowing it.
I'm going to be right back because I have something that I think makes this really interesting.
Wacky fact.
No.
All right. Well, that's because while I was trying to find.
Well, I think that makes a very intriguing, because I've thought about some of the stuff of, I'm just kind of connecting dots here because, for instance, I don't know if I should or not, Shane, you guys have all talked to Shane on the podcast and stuff. The man has big deer.
Yep.
And I would say that he has a pretty big control of the fact that he has big deer. And I think a lot of that is because if you listen to him talk or you see what he's doing during the summers and stuff, 90% of what he is doing is significant food plots, agriculture, planting corn, planting beans. Like his whole entire farms are set up around food. I don't hear him talking about, well, yeah, this is a buck that I'm not too worried about. Yeah, he might bring somebody
He's
in to
not
shoot or something, but he's
culling a
not
lot of
sitting
deer.
there like, hey, I need a cull deer.
Right.
And he has very large deer. And the more people I can think of off the top of my head that are doing similar things are having similar results versus, hey, this spot, maybe we're not so focused on a food plot, food, this, that, or the other. We're just trying to flat out manage the age caliber and the proper deer that we want in that area. And we don't have those results because we even have a couple of farms that are like that aren't food focused. And we've seen massive fluctuation. It's an up and down type of thing. I knew he was grabbing antlers.
So put your headset on before you start. But here's the thing. It's true. I agree with you on Shane is doing what he needs to do as far as food. However, so I would tell you,
That's
like,
a good boy.
and
Yeah,
so
those are antlers.
you guys have given me crap about shooting spikes, okay? And
Yeah, I think that's a valid reason to give you crap.
however, but one of the things they're saying is that the next contributing factor that goes along with the food is the carrying capacity. So if you don't and we have an issue with too many deer, that's directly affecting the food.
Yep.
So if you need to kill some of those deer and you can't kill enough does, and if you kill some of those bucks to get the numbers down sheerly off of that premise, then you're helping yourself.
But we still don't know how much food so supposedly food makes a bigger impact than genetics, but we don't know how big. Is that correct?
Correct. Although, well, we could say that and while you're talking about this, I'll look it up and I'll find where they talked about, because
Okay, so this
okay, hold on. 145-inch average in East Yana is significantly larger than the average 5.5-year-old buck unfed pastures on the ranch, which like most of South Texas is somewhere in the mid 120s. Improved nutrition in East Yana alone accomplished more for antler growth than intensive breeding control in West Yana. So by them feeding the deer, exactly what you were just talking about. Shane's going out and he's taking care of his deer. He's planting stuff, leaving it there for them. So they're making it through the winter in much better, their bodies are much more susceptible to be in good health when they come out, both the does and the bucks. So then they're born more healthy. All that comes, I mean, they're saying that you could see a 20 to 25 inch difference if you have good food program, and then you would be if you tried to simply cull your deer, and you could end up with a 7-inch. Now, if you could afford to do it, yeah, you'd be looking at a 32-inch difference. On one farm, someone might kill a 130-inch deer. Your deer at the same age should be 162. Nobody that I know has the ability to do that part like what they did in this culling process.
I know one person.
I think a lot of people do.
You do too.
Oh yeah, he could do it. He could do it.
And it so far
It's true.
would seem to be accurate. Meaning, so is what we're saying, without naming names, most you can probably figure it out on your own. If you could write a blank check and be able to,
money was no object.
we really need you guys to leave us a lot more reviews because we can't do this yet. But if you could take a semi-truck of alfalfa bales to each of your farms and food that provides nutrition, all the stuff based off of what they need, that now BG, instead of being just shy of 190,
would have probably been
is 210.
210.
Yeah, and I think that the person I'm thinking of so far would have proven that, and my hat's off to them. They have the capability to do that, but if you look at everybody else in the whitetail landscape, the deer that they are able to kill and have each year, and then compared to the time frame of this other individual, it's night and day, and they're humongous deer. And the only thing I would be able to think is different is the food. But so anyways, let's go to this real quick because I think this is really, really interesting to the genetic conversation.
So
what did you just ask me?
For the people that can't see.
Hold on, no. I just want to just 1 second because we'll get to that
I was
here.
asking what year this is because, like, what order do we have here?
Okay, so what do you think it is?
I don't remember all that well, but in my opinion, because I'm going off when I think he got killed, I'm really confused that one has 2020 on it because that's the smallest shed. Well,
So you think it's 3, 4, 5?
No, that's impossible.
Ignore the 2020 though.
This would have to be his. Wait, hold on. Now you got me really confused in my head. Because
Okay.
I'm gonna say he was killed, and he had to have been killed in.
It's all right now. Points proven. Now you can. What were you gonna say? You're gonna let everybody know home.
That you got 3. He's got 3 sheds sitting here that he went and picked up. And
3 deer antlers. They're sitting right here. So now is what I'm gonna tell you is gonna make way more sense. What if I told you that this antler and this antler are not from the same deer?
Oh.
Yeah. So the reason this one is so crazy, this is a deer we named Junior. And Dad picked up his shed one time and he picked up JJ's shed, which was Junior. Okay. And was showing somebody JJ's shed. And I told him that's not JJ's shed. And he says, yeah, it is. And if you guys have picked up by now, I have a photographic memory when it comes to deer. I said, no, it's not. And then I grabbed him Junior's shed. And then he was like, oh, shit, you're right. And
You were saying it was Junior?
Dad grabbed
No,
this antler to show
said
somebody.
that it was Junior shed.
Yeah, you kept saying
Yes.
Dad was saying
Yeah,
it was JJ.
and I was
Okay.
incorrect. It was actually
JJ.
Junior.
So this, we believe, was the same year. He was 4 years old, and Junior was 4 years old. And so if you look at these two antlers, both have a split eye guard.
Yeah, they're identical.
The G2 has, little blades in it.
Like it could have a kicker and
The-
then a little bit of a drop time.
Yes, has a drop tine in the same
angle.
exact spot. And what's really interesting about even the end of the beam.
Yeah.
And then
it's
what's-
an identical shed, just smaller.
And then the next year, when he turned 5, and then I believe we saw him for a short period when he was, I guess, 5, and then disappeared, he also dropped the drop tine. Both of them dropped the drop tine. How much does a DNA test cost? And can you get it from antlers?
I don't know.
Well, because I would love to know if they could extract some bone marrow or something from that and test these two deer and let us know, hey, yeah, there's actually an X% match or something. Because I would have a hard time believing that this deer is not a son of Junior's.
You would think.
So it is what I'm trying to gather is, does that mean that he is a genetic anomaly? That within that, and
I
then
think he was already a genetic anomaly because of the entire podcast we had where me and you about killed each other.
Well, the thing is,
what do you mean?
look
as
at how
far
many,
as his body size and everything and the size of his antlers, this deer specifically did not match any other deer I've ever seen at all. Not even relatively close. Based on age, based on body size, based on antler size, he was flat out different.
and look at how many antlers we do pick up. We've got hundreds.
Yeah.
Okay, and how many times have we seen this, where one passes on the same traits? I mean, just so similar.
We've seen similar. I don't know that we've ever seen quite
To that degree.
similar. Yeah.
Right.
We have one now that's alive that I would say absolutely has to have lineage to a deer that we know.
Yeah. Eminem.
Uh-huh.
Well, I would
Eminem.
tell you that there is a, what did I say, 28% chance, because he has mass. 28%.
Yeah.
There's a 28% chance that he has gathered that from his father.
And so, well,
Yeah, but his tine length was identical. Wait, are we talking about Junior or Eminem?
Eminem.
Everything about that deer. See, he's not super wide. He's got the same length and tines that they're going up like the other one was, and then he's got literally identical, just in the young form. He looks like he's on the same path as what his dad was.
Well, that's the one thing that they do confirm. Passing deer and letting them get to 5.5 years old is
the
when you're
biggest
going to
thing.
see you're going to see your deer the biggest.
So they did say 5.5 was the biggest.
5.5 to 7.5. They just said
See,
5.5 to
Okay, there's a
7.5.
variation though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they're mature.
Yeah, Yeah, but did they say that also correlates to the antler size?
Well, I think they took that as
Well, 5.5 to 7.5 is mature. They're saying that.
they're
that's gonna
saying
be
that
their
that's when they were
prime,
trying to
their
get them
biggest
to their
antlers.
biggest rack, and so they don't state that. They just simply said that that's when they were checking them.
Wow,
that
that
they're,
threw me
5.5
loop.
years old is what they considered a mature deer.
So then every single time that they have a fawn, do these genetics get diluted, right?
You would think.
Or they could even they may get diluted, but they also may get enhanced because the doe may be carrying, she's some crazy sire. That's why it's so uncommon.
Basically, there's no way to know anything. You just need to put a lot of food on your farm, make sure there's corn, make sure there's beans, make sure there's alfalfa, any kind of thing that a deer could possibly want. Try to keep every bit of stress out of there and wait 15 years, and you're going to have yourself some big deer. That's what you need to do.
You don't have to wait 15 years.
Not with food, yeah.
I'm
with
just
food,
saying
I
that
think
there's so many variables. You're never going to control them all. The best thing you can control would be food.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so,
but it's interesting to me to know, can I have a deer that's within 1 year of the lineage, and he is 60% of his father?
Okay.
That
Yeah, you could.
Because if I have 28% mass, 48% on tine length,
That's the highest. Tine length is 49%.
okay, well, just those two there, I'm up to 60-some% of what his dad was.
Yeah, and now imagine if you were able to feed him well.
Right.
Okay, and because feeding him well as opposed to not feeding him well could contribute another 20 to 25 inches.
So all I'm taking out of this is I don't really give a crap about shooting the bucks I think suck. I'm going to spend more energy on trying to plant fields or have areas that I can put the right amount of food into it.
See, and I would like to know how much now let's talk about that. If you can plant, because not everyone can plant stuff that can make it, because that's why I plant bigger food plots than what I need to hunt, is because I'm also thinking of the deer and I want to have enough food there to help them, because I do feel like we have an 80-acre piece that I feel like that a 2.5-acre food plot that I put in there helps those deer tremendously.
Yeah, and I think that if you could make that even larger, that's what I've never understood about food plots is, it draws deer there, but in my opinion, I want a food plot that's big enough that it's going to
really
help them and keep them there as best I can.
I have another.
That's going to depend a lot on how many deer are coming to it and how much they decimate it. If you got 25 deer feeding on a 2-acre food plot as opposed to 5, or you have 50, there's going to be a huge difference between there.
Okay, I got a question real quick though. So, what are Canadian deer eating?
They have agriculture up there as well.
Yeah, but I would have a hard time believing that their nutrition is the equivalent to, say, ours.
Yeah, but that's another thing right there is
subspecies.
Part of it I think is subspecies is a big thing, but another thing is that what I just said, and maybe you were out there, but no, I think you were in here. Specific areas, whether it's within the same state or not, has excessively larger deer versus another area, and not everybody knows the massive difference. Canada, we have plenty of people that have messaged me about buying our scents that don't have big deer. But you could go another 70 to 100 miles north of where they're at, and they have freaking monsters left and right.
Right, but is what we're saying from the study is that the food is what attributes that size.
But I think that, so you asked earlier, you were saying, so does it matter? People comment Iowa has these big deer, and it's just because they have corn and beans. I don't believe the subspecies has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I would love to know that information.
I believe with all my heart that the same subspecies that runs into Canada comes down through Minnesota and through Iowa and Illinois. Because look at the size of the deer, the body, the antlers. Yeah, I mean, on average.
Well, that's what. If you could look at the North America, right? Because we have whitetails in all the states, and then you take your subspecies and we give these subregions a rating on food. Okay, so let's say Iowa's a 10, because we need to have an agronomist on here and ask them all this stuff that would know the CSR ratings of all these different states and stuff. But anyways, the point is, let's say Iowa's a 10, okay, on food and nutrition. Texas is a 2, okay. Canada is a 4, lot of them have got to be eating
So
pine shrubs and stuff.
So imagine if the food source in Canada was matched to what it is in Iowa.
Would they be 250s?
Yes. I believe that this study.
Or you're going to find that it's actually a good, better food there than you're anticipating.
I think that those subspecies aren't able to hit their max potential because
Correct.
they don't have the food.
I
agree.
That could
I
be
think
the case in some places, but I also think that it could be as simple as we don't know everything that, like, the type of mineral and stuff that they're eating, and it's the same kind of thing of what you're talking about with your buddy that you went elk hunted with. That when they have less rain, they're getting more minerals out of what they're eating, which results in better antler growth for them, which is kind of odd compared to what other people say. But he's proof in the pudding there. I mean, it's true. And then you go up to somewhere like Canada, maybe they're not eating corn and beans and other things, but they might have a completely different soil makeup or something that is putting minerals in the grass and whatever else they are eating that is significantly better for them.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think that you're looking at a deer that is they outrank Iowa deer on the genetic portion. They've already got something because they're equivalent to what we're killing here, and they're doing it without the nutrition that is provided like it is in the Midwest.
I would love to know if you went up there and fed those deer the same thing as here. Could you get any idea? And then all of a sudden you do have just ungodly huge deer.
Well, and because here's the other one that I would like to know, and this is just a food for thought. Maybe someone will hear the podcast and be able to write in and tell us who to talk to. Why are our antlers so much more dense than, say, Kansas? And that meaning you killed two bucks that are exactly the same. Let's just say it's a 145-inch deer.
Yep.
Okay, I got a 145-inch deer from Kansas and a 145-inch deer from Iowa. And almost every single one of the Kansas ones that I've ever picked up is lighter.
Yep.
They're not, and if you look, they're like more porous. Like there's almost like honeycombed in their antlers, and therefore you see a lot of them broken.
Yep.
Just as impressive, same deer, same grow. I don't know if they're growing faster or what they're eating or what. I would love for someone to tell me why that happens. Why was Hammer 4.5 pounds or 4 pounds?
Yeah.
Why is another 8-point only 2 pounds?
I have absolutely zero scientific backing of this statement, but I believe 100% that the density of your antlers correlates to the health of that deer. Because it seemed like some of our deer that, like Hammer, I think if you could put him on a health test when he was 5, 6, 7 years old, that he would crush it.
Right.
Because
what do we need to do to figure out this stuff with a Canada difference and an Iowa difference? Because I will 100% disagree with you both on that, because I just looked on a map, and I think that it's what's already there.
What would they be eating in Canada that makes them so much better?
There's like 90% more water there than Iowa.
So according to this, based off of Nova Scotia, deer have adopted more of the environmental climate of Canada from January to February, so their metabolism actually is slower and doesn't need as much food. When you look at the primary resources of what Canada has, you're looking at more natural winter food for deer consists primarily of woody browse from hardwood twigs and occasionally needles of balsam fir. The most preferred
Hold on, let me give people an update. So is what Nick is saying that in Nova Scotia, the deer have adapted. They have a slower metabolism because they don't have as much food, and that they are eating woody browse and what would you say? Balsam firs?
Natural food.
Yeah.
It's not man-made stuff.
Yep.
So hold on. To put it in perspective for someone, what we're referring to here is two guys who go to the gym, and they both work their butts off for an hour and a half every day. They go 6 days a week. And one guy is feeding himself nutrition that is appropriate, meaning he's gone to someone that's worked with him on how many calories and carbs and protein. And the other guy just goes to 7-Eleven and eats whatever. The difference is going to be if they're equal. Then
same genetic.
Imagine what this guy could have done if he was to also.
Well, so use a number. Say bench press.
Yes.
So this one dude is eating everything he's supposed to, doing all the stuff that he's supposed to do, and he's working out twice as hard as the other guy, and he can never bench more than 265. And the other dude's eating 7-Eleven, whatever he wants and benching 380, 400 pounds. And I can attest to that. And you can too, Mr. Oreo Pepsi, that some people, it's not genetically fair.
Yeah, I agree. It's not genetically fair. This is crap.
Okay, go on, Nick. I just wanted to make sure that because you had a lot of good information. So Nick's going to go on.
So according to the rest of that part of what to feed, the most preferred browse species include sugar, red mountain and striped maple, yellow and white birch, witch and beaked hazel, and red oak trees.
Okay, he's just going into
basically shrubs.
The shrubs that they're eating.
Multiple of those are minerals.
They are minerals, but I guarantee you that the mineral itself is not alone as good as what they're able to when you have soybeans and corn readily available.
We should probably speak
I want
real
to come
quick
to talk to somebody that knows this.
I think what we can do is we're going to start posting more YouTube videos. We can lay out the elements that we really feel as though is having these attributing factors, and that study can help us limit what those are, and then we can go and find the answers. I'll bet a lot of people, let us know if you guys would be interested in watching that video. I think it could be really entertaining. However, I do think real quick we should go back and categorize for everybody what we're discussing as far as these subspecies, because I think that there's a lot of people, and I would be in the same boat if we hadn't seen this make such a big difference for us. They probably think that your climate is the only reason that your species are so different. For instance, a Florida deer is going to be a 100-pound dressed Florida deer, from what I understand, is really large. Where an Iowa deer, if it's dressed 100 pounds, it's a doe.
Fawn.
Yeah. But the point with this is there's how many? It's like 30 some.
I know there's at least 17 different subspecies of whitetail deer.
Okay, and that's all across North America.
Yes.
And Canadian deer are different subspecies than Iowa deer or Texas deer.
He's saying that he would think they're the same.
At one point I thought that I had seen something that said the plains whitetail is what it's referred to, and all of them have a Greek origin, or that when you go into the Furhiniad for whatever.
Look up different subspecies of whitetails.
It should come up pretty quick. But the plains whitetail is the largest, and that is what is here in Iowa. It's what's in Illinois, Kansas, and it runs up north through Minnesota and up into Canada. And not all of Canada has it. Like he brings up Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I'm looking at like Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan, Alberta. That seems to be where the larger whitetails are. Even British Columbia, from what I can recall, did not have the same caliber of deer. And because if you think of it as climate-based, you would go look at Montana. When we lived in Montana, how come those deer weren't that much bigger?
However, you would say that the northwestern deer in Montana, before they got destroyed by wolves, grizzlies, and mountain lions, were much larger than any deer over on the Milk River or anything else. The two state records in Montana came from the northwest corner of Montana, and they were not 190-inch deer. The one was like 230 something, the non-typical, and the typical was like 190 something net. So, and I would say that I think we have at least two different subspecies here in Iowa. And the reason that I say that is because we have one farm where Dad he goes shoots does around his house. He better kill, for every deer I kill, he better kill at least two. Because the ones that are around his house, I'd say average probably your doe is probably 100 pounds or so. And I can go to this other place, or he could go there, any of us could go there, and you shoot the does there, and I'd say their averaging is 120. I've killed two of them that were 138 and 141. And then the bucks up there, it's the same thing. It's not abnormal for us to kill a buck here, and he's a 5-year-old deer, and he's under 200 pounds. I would tell you up there, you kill a 5-year-old buck on one of these other farms that we have, and he's under 200 pounds, he was sick. Because almost all of them have been well over 200 pounds. And I feel as though that's a subspecies thing.
It could be. I mean, I can't.
I'm just going on record.
We can just tell you that this is our opinion. Some of it's our opinion, but this study brought up some of this. I can just tell you that study says that some of my belief is dead wrong. It's
not necessarily dead wrong, but you can't. It's going to be almost impossible for it to ever have any
true
effectiveness.
Effect. Yeah.
I'm going on record and saying that the day that I will happily eat my words or happily rub it in your face, that I don't know who we would talk to about this or if the study's even been done. I think that Canada would be the caliber of what they're having. Now, I think that you guys would be correct if you could add even more of the food that we're having, type of food we have here to there. It's going to be even larger caliber deer. I think that it's because of the amount of water and the amount of water that's coming from the ocean up there, and then that's putting minerals in the soil as to why. Because if you look
In
at like
Saskatchewan?
yeah, look, it's not very far from the ocean, and a lot of those rivers connect directly from the ocean to Saskatchewan.
Well, Saskatchewan is straight above us.
Yeah, but northern Saskatchewan
little
is
bit
where
west.
a lot of these big deer are, and the ocean goes straight northeast of that for, I mean, it's probably a couple 100 miles. But at the same time, think about,
Dude,
any river.
Saskatchewan
I don't.
is a long way from an ocean.
Yeah, I
No,
don't-
it's not. Look,
Yes, it is.
right there. That's not that
Dude,
far.
that's thousands of miles.
Do a line, the north corner, and rivers. Rivers come into it that are connecting to it, and look at the amount of lakes and everything that are around it. The whole freaking thing is water.
Well, they got. I can't say you're wrong. I think you're wrong.
That's what I'm saying is I will happily eat my.
I mean, I think you're wrong. Could I be just like I'm sitting here saying that I believe that if we needed to kill Boss Buck because he was a 125-inch deer and we didn't want him passing on his genetics, now I'm hearing that it really didn't matter. The chances are that he could have been passing on a genetic that was going to produce a 180-inch whitetail.
So the closest place is 300 miles from the ocean.
That's what I just said. A couple 100 miles.
How is that getting to the same soil that those deer are at? And I don't think that the
Did
northeast
you know
corner.
that rivers that come from the ocean are there's rivers that connect from ocean to ocean.
They
There's
all come from
thousands
the
and
ocean.
thousands
Right,
and
but
thousands and thousands
but
of miles.
let's use our brains real quick before we talk about that. The largest deer in Canada aren't coming from the northeast corner of Saskatchewan.
But they're getting to that water is much easier to get to there, and the amount of water that still is there just in general.
We don't have a
naturally there.
freaking clue. That's what it comes down to. Is
No, we don't have a clue. That's what I'm saying is that this is an out of whack, and Warren's going to argue it. He has nothing to base his argument off of, and neither do I. That's why I want to talk to somebody, and I will happily take – because there is studies that show – like I've told him about it. There are
Right.
certain jungles that are the most freaking vibrant colors of anything they've ever seen, with the most amount of different species that they've ever seen in certain areas, solely because of the predators killing things that are on the beach that have come from the oceans and bringing it back, and that biodegrades into the soil and everything. And the minerals is what makes it so flourishing for every species and every type of plant
Right.
life.
So Ontario should have big whitetails then, and Manitoba, because they border the ocean.
I don't know. I don't know what their deer are. I also know that, I mean, I'm going off of Saskatchewan solely because we know some people there that have.
Well, where I hunted at, there wasn't much. I mean, I shouldn't say there wasn't much water. There wasn't much. There's a lot of water everywhere, but it was a lot of just timber with dampness,
lakes,
you know,
crap
lakes
like
and
that
stuff
around
like
it.
that for sure. So you could be right, but I agree. I do agree. It isn't very often that I agree with Warren, but in this particular case, I agree. I would love to know whether or not those deer could benefit from the food that.
I think no matter who's right, they're going to benefit from the food.
Well, here comes one of the things though that someone out there's got to be thinking this. Why don't you guys address the fact then? Should we be feeding our deer? Should we be feeding it? Should we have a food program for our deer off season? And by all means, this would say yes.
I'll tell you.
Absolutely. However, I do think, yes, I agree. According to that, you absolutely should be feeding your deer. However, I would
To the scale of a 50-pound bag of corn, you're
No,
not
that's
doing
not going to
anything.
help. But if you're
right, which is our problem, is we can't.
Yes.
We're not going to be able to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to feed them adequately. However, what would make a difference? And then the other thing I'd want to know is, what should I feed them? Like, is corn actually going to help
Corn
them at
is
all?
according
Corn-
to any study you read,
corn's
corn
the
is
worst
awful
thing for 'em.
for them during
Right.
the winter. Yet they're eating it all the
Well,
time.
I'm just saying that's what I don't want to know. You know, I need to be giving these deer whey mass gainer and throwing that in the
Well,
alfalfa and stuff.
And that's where many of your different companies do what? But you have a
I'm
bunch of different
in on
companies that are
this.
now making food that is supplements for deer that is supposed to help them.
Yeah, that's my
but
point,
so
though. Is
far-
they sell that as it's like, hey, go buy this and you're going to help your deer. Yeah, you might help a deer for a couple days. There's no way you're going to buy enough of those unless you're just freaking out the ass rich to be able to buy tons and tons and tons of that food to be able to dump enough of that bag of what's in that bag to actually benefit your deer.
Well, they also don't know what actually attributes to antler growth, because otherwise, as a marketer, that would be the number one thing that you should be promoting. Is we've done studies like this place where we know all these deer that you feed them X, Y, and Z, you're getting a 10% growth increase over them not getting anything or over them getting competitors or this. They think that it helps, but they have no idea what actually is what really drives it.
What ends up happening is what we all see is the one that works. Okay, and what I mean by that is the one that works is the one we're like, oh my gosh, look at this. They love this. They're devouring this, man. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best thing for them.
They're devouring corn in the
Yeah.
wintertime, and it's not the best thing for
Well,
them.
or they're devouring a particular mineral that is, or a particular attractant, that something's in there that is just, boy, the deer smell it and they're like, that's what I want to eat.
Well, because
However,
that's the other thing you got to keep in mind is how often do they need to be eating this?
That's my point, is that how are you going to be able to keep a 50-pound bag of whatever out there enough, even if you're dumping tons of it? How are you going to do that enough to make sure that they're all going through it and you're genuinely helping the herd? Versus fields, if you could plant the right things, that's a mass level.
So here's a
food.
high-level question. Let's just say
high-level question.
it is
It's coming
'cause
from you. It ain't that high level.
No, well, this is. I think that this
That's
is
pretty
a
good.
endless ladder. So let's just say that. Let's say we do all this research, okay, and we figure out the exact ingredients that it takes to grow a monster whitetail, right?
Okay.
And we know every single thing that you need to do to be able to make this happen, and we have anything that we need at our disposal to go and actually apply this, okay? And now we go and apply this, and it works, and it makes a 30 or 40% difference in our deer, okay? And so now instead of us every year having hopefully a couple 170-inch deer to hunt, we have a couple 200-inch deer to hunt, okay? As a hunter, is it going to lose the excitement of it? Because before, what makes a 200-inch deer so exciting, or a
There's just not very many
190-inch
of them.
deer? Yes, there's
Doesn't
so
matter, you're gonna
few of
keep-
them that it's like, oh my God, this one's such an outlier that it's exciting. Where I feel as though if you went and you figured all that out and you started doing that, now the outlier becomes a 220, a 230.
Yeah, so it's never going to stop. That's the point.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. So
You're
why?
always going to have the anticipation.
I think it would ruin it, is what I'm saying. Is I think that you would get to a point where you're not, you're literally just trying to farm a deer.
Well, technically, we're already there.
Yeah, what are you doing right now?
We're already there because there's so many people out there that are listening to this podcast right now that are going,
Is what I'm
140-inch deer? Holy cow, I would be shooting, and we're passing 140-inch deer. We're, 100, like you've mentioned, 125, 130-inch deer. A lot of times you don't even hit the brakes if you're passing them driving down the road.
That's what I'm saying is I believe that we have already achieved nirvana. We're already there. Because that's what the anticipation is about, is it's always going to be if you just moved the scale and 200 was considered a small deer and 300 was considered a big deer, it'd be the same thing. You'd be driving by a 200-inch deer because he's 100 inches smaller than the big ones. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah, but there's no point to this, though, because
I'm
it could
saying-
just continue to go.
That's what I'm saying is that basically all of this, a lot of this is what you're doing as far as strictly chasing the size, is putting yourself into an endless circle of just trying to chase something that really you've already achieved.
It's unattainable.
Yep.
It's unattainable to ever be satisfied
Unless you are appreciative and
of what.
excited with what you have now.
And that is where I come from, that I try to explain to people, having grown up in the East Coast and lived down south in Arkansas the first 27 years of my life. This is heaven, because I know the difference. I know what it feels like to be that guy sitting in a stand and not seeing very many deer, sitting in a stand, hoping that you just would see a racked buck.
But here's the thing I think that's interesting about that, too, because I know that you'd attest to this. If you went back to Virginia right now and you sat in a stand and you saw a 100-inch deer,
I'd be jacked.
even though you've killed multiple booners, and here you would be passing that deer,
Wouldn't pass him there.
you'd be absolutely stoked.
Yeah, it's all relative to what you're hunting,
What you have
where
to
you're
work
hunting.
with, absolutely.
I think this
That was
has
an
been
interesting conversation.
I think this has been a more than interesting conversation. I think we've created maybe as many questions as we've answered, but I just think that it's really cool. So if you're one of those guys out there thinking that you want to hunt big deer, do it. Go somewhere that has big deer. If you don't have them where you are, if you're someone out there that lives where big deer are, and you think you want to grow bigger deer, maybe take a look at some of this stuff and see whether or not how you can help yourself the most. I just enjoy trying to be a part of it. I enjoy the getting ready for hunting seasons and almost as much, if not more sometimes, than actually sitting in the stand trying to kill them. There's just something about putting in rub trees. There's something about setting out your trail cameras and setting up this and getting a picture of that. And it's just cool. And so what we're saying is that Warren makes the statement that we're already there. We're already, living in nirvana. Maybe we are here in Iowa. Maybe someone in another state might not be. But it's out there for you to have. So thanks again, guys, for tuning in. And we hope that if we did create some questions.
Whoa. I have a wacky fact.
I was going to introduce before we leave, we're going to have to do Warren's wacky fact. And I remember the name of it where you get messed up. So
Congrats. This one, we're going to do this just so that it'll really starfish Easton's brain. Starfishes do not have blood. If you were to cut one of its legs, blood will not spill out. Instead, they simply regrow their lost limbs as if nothing happened. Starfishes get their nutrients by using the seawater found in their vascular systems.
in
So
Saskatchewan,
maybe
maybe there's a lot of starfish in Saskatchewan.
That's just showing how much nutrition is in an ocean water. My point proven.
we're going to shoot a deer up there and it won't bleed.
So what is
And then it's going to grow an antler out of it.
The fact is that they don't have blood and that they can grow back their
and they can
appendages.
regrow limbs.
Did you not know that one either?
No. You didn't know
Are
why.
you serious?
You didn't know why. The U.S. government issued Santa Claus a pilot's license.
There, that's better. That's more like it.
They also gave the Jolly Fat Man a copy of airway maps in 1927 and promised to keep the runway lights on. Many believe that this airway route is what he mainly uses to deliver his presents so quickly.
Oh, my Lord. They are so dedicated to keeping these kids happy.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Maybe when we get a little closer to Christmas, we'll have to share Dad's story of what he did to me.
Oh, yeah.
was
That's a good
good.
one.
It was pretty
was really
impressive.
That was really good.
All right,
Christmas
well-
is coming. We'll have to think about that one.
We're surrounded by a very high IQ here. The past 2 or 3 freaking wacky facts have not been wacky, except for the Santa one. That one was unknown. That's funny. I like that.
Combined IQ, I think we're at least pushing 10, 12,
You gotta be
something like
close.
that. So
I'd give you 8. So you guys are at 20 if you get 12. 12
We're
plus 8
talking
is
about
20.
you, and this is my point. Okay,
Yeah.
so he just freaking aired himself out how stupid he is.
No, I'm helping you too.
Here we go.
combined, we
Explain
have an
myself.
IQ of 20.
Starfish regrow their limbs.
80. You would be adding that math that fast if you were at an IQ of
Thank
12.
you guys for joining in. I don't know why you are, but thank you for joining in. This is the Raised Hunting Podcast crew signing off.